Welcome to the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with Operation Smile, an international medical charity that provides life-changing surgery to children born with cleft lip and palate. If you'd like to support this cause, please visit emearecruitment.com/operation-smile. In this episode, we welcome Sanjay S Singh, the Global Chief Human Resources Officer at UPL, who explains why you must drive diversity at levels that really matter.
So, hello everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with our good friends over at Operation Smile. As my colleague Rose mentioned, we're delighted to have Sanjay on the podcast today. So Sanjay, hopefully you can hear me okay.
Oh yes, Paul, I can hear you very well.
Perfect. Well, as I say, delighted to welcome you as a guest today on the podcast. I think before we hit record, we were just talking about the fact you're in London at the moment. So you've managed to survive the whole COVID situation and you're fit and healthy now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, when I landed here, it was a little difficult with quarantine, but after my test to release, I'm pretty comfortable. In fact, it turned out to be a positive surprise. It is a lot more open than what we expected or what we could figure out from the news report. And I'm happy to see that Londoners and Britishers are back to getting normal.
No, it's true. It feels like it's been a long time coming, but yeah, fingers crossed the positive feeling and positive results keep coming and we can start booking some holidays in before we know it.
Right.
So obviously, I've got some good questions to go through with you today, Sanjay. Now, some of these questions have come from our external network and some internally as well. And I guess the first one is quite a broad one, but it was something that I always like to ask the majority of the guests coming on, because obviously you've had a really successful career. You've experienced a lot in the HR discipline over the years. And I was just wondering what it feels like now to be the Global Chief HR Officer at a company like UPL.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. And that's a question that I keep asking myself all the time, because the more you ask, the deeper is the realization of your responsibilities. So UPL, as you know, is the fifth largest in the crop production sector globally. UPL as a company has grown very fast. It was $1 billion company in 2009-10. Today it is almost crossed $5.5 billion. So it's a company on the move, and it's a company which has grown a lot through the inorganic route. We had this acquisition of Arista in 2018, which fructified in 2019. So net, what does it really make me do or enjoin me to perform towards the associates we have? I think the first thing is essentially around how do you create a strong top team which is completely aligned, because people come from different cultures, and the only way to succeed in the world is having a good diversity at the top leadership level. Diversity not only of gender, but diversity of geographies and diversity of people coming from different lineages. So I think the first thing that I really focus on is the quality of top team, maintaining their diversity and their alignment. The second is all about, having the best in class ERP system or digital systems to ensure that whatever we want to execute, we can execute well. Because, we make, despite being an India headquartered company, we make 90% of the revenues outside India. So we make 40% in Latin America, we make 18% in North America, we make 16% in Europe, and we are spread like that. So technology is a great enabler for us, and we really harness technology to ensure that all the processes, whether it's performance management, whether it's employee experience, employee engagement, we are able to execute seamlessly. Because the only way to execute is to write on a platform. And there are many other points which I don't want to cover here today. But finally, people stay because of 2-3 key reasons. One is they know that they're on the right ship. So one is the vision of the company. We are doing pretty well there. We are the number one in the world in the BioPlus. We are really leading the way in our sector on the sustainable products and sustainable solutions. And the second is we are a fast growing company. People are getting a lot more opportunities to learn and grow. And the third is that with our culture of informal engagement, we really keep on improving or enhancing employee experience by buttressing our benefits and by also ensuring that we are flexible and locally sensitive to align to the people needs. And this has really turned out to be very handy during the COVID-19 crisis, where everybody was doing things differently. We decentralized the whole system. We did not try to force any one rule. So I would say that these are the four or five things that I'm always aware of, and which I feel at a top level, if we focus, will help us, will help HR really become a real contributor to the organization's strength.
That's really interesting, the things you mentioned there, Sanjay. And I think the comment you made actually at the end of that was saying, obviously, you're aware of things like the having a great culture, having diversity across the team at the top level, having great systems and technology in place, because this obviously then helps with the growth of the business and the retention of great people as well. So you have an awareness around it. But I guess what a lot of senior HR people, or in fact, not just HR people, senior people in general, would probably ask the question is, I guess it's one thing having an awareness of it and another thing making it happen, So are there any personality traits you have that you feel have actioned the awareness, and any advice you might give to the network on that?
Yeah, I think, Paul, that's a very smart question. There is always a very thin dividing line between saying what you say and meaning what you say and doing what you say. And I think diversity sometimes actually starts, moving from doing what you say is saying what you say. In my view, the way to drive diversity, the way to drive inclusion, the way to give more representation to women leaders at levels that it really matters, where they can really create a positive spiral in the company, where they can really create a positive spiral for other women to grow, is by getting them at the critical levels. So I would say that that the only way to do it is to convert that into a tangible target. Like you have a tangible target for revenue and EBITDA and contribution margin. Having a tangible target on diversity hiring, on diversity promotions, on diversity representation helps. Otherwise, it just starts slipping sometimes into your subconscious, and then you're alerted by somebody to bring it back to your conscious. So I think the quality that really helps us, improve here is essentially converting it into tangible target and tracking it for execution.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that it comes down to the tangible targets that you're able to track, because I guess one of the challenges I tend to find with the HR discipline is that clearly, you're dealing with people, and people, they have a mind of their own. It's different if you're in, let's say, finance, for example, or supply chain, where you're dealing with a product or a very defined bottom line number, where these things don't have a mindset of their own. And I think it's one of those things that I admire about anybody who's succeeded in HR, because you have to deal with so many grey areas and the personality and the challenges of people, and it makes the tangible side of things probably even more challenging. So I guess where I'm going to with this is what made you decide to go into HR in the first place? Was it something that you were led by from your family? Did you see yourself as a very people-orientated person, and HR naturally came from this? Because it's not the easiest discipline or profession you could choose. So I just wondered what took you in this direction in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think I am always asked this. And, you go to the college, you go to campus, you are asked to choose a stream or function stream. I chose strategy instead of HR. And while I was a student, I realized that HR is supposed to work on the culture piece, and culture is critical to strategy. And companies succeed or fail because of a strong culture or the lack of one. And so therefore, with these kind of half-baked ideas in my head, I landed up in human resources. And then in my first role, I realized, oh my God, I'm not handling numbers. I'm not a salesman. I'm not a finance guy. I'm not in the mainstream. But all these things suddenly became a thing of past, because I realized that we do 2 or 3 things which are nebulous, but which are pretty effective. And second is that every system has a sense of inertia or entropy. So every system, if it is not corrected at periodic intervals, or it does not have a self-corrective nature, can actually become slightly dysfunctional. And I realized that HR people are supposed to put up the right process and system, but they are also supposed to, take note of something going wrong, of ensuring that leaders, walk the talk, of ensuring that we are fair and responsible, of ensuring that, people inspire, or they lead by integrity and trust. And I realized, this is a very difficult function, because you cannot just put 2 + 2 is 4. And you have to work with multiple stakeholders. You have to align them. At times, you want to tell them the tough truth, but you have to go in a roundabout manner. So I realized it's a good place to be in, number one. Number two, most of the stuff is pretty strategic. Number three, you are always into ensuring that the system corrects itself for a longer time, for a longer tenure. That means a lot of people are working for organizational performance, but you're working for organizational health, which really adds resilience and long-term strength to it. And that's the reason I stayed back. So I love working here. I love talking to people. I love doing course corrections, but I do it in a way which has become typically my style of working.
Hi everybody, it's Paul Thomas here. I hope that you're well and you're enjoying the podcast so far. Thank you once again for your continued support listening to the podcast. I just wanted to break into the recording to talk to you about a really exciting new partnership that EMEA Recruitment has along with Operation Smile. And as founder of EMEA Recruitment, it's an honour and a privilege to announce this partnership. Personally, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so the mission of Operation Smile is something that I have a strong personal connection with. It's not an understatement to say that the dentists and surgeons that help me were life changers. It's not only about the actual operations that take place, the support and care post and pre-operation are beyond value, and from personal experience I can only say that I'd not be the confident, happy person I am today without this support. I want to help children experience the support and care and skill that I experienced on my journey, and hope that we can do this along with Operation Smile. Every 3 minutes a child is born with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and the mission of Operation Smile is to provide help and support to these children through providing 6,000 medical volunteers across 80 countries who are dedicated to help these children with facial conditions, most commonly cleft lip and cleft palate. More than 200,000 children are born with a cleft every year, and they are often unable to speak, eat, socialise or even smile. However, it can take as little as 45 minutes and cost just €180 or 182 francs for Operation Smile to provide a child with life-changing surgery. Now, in partnership with Operation Smile, EMEA Recruitment is raising valuable funds and aiming to create 100 new smiles to support the organisation to provide free surgeries for children and young adults all over the world. Please help us by donating through the link in the bio, or get in touch to see how your company can help get involved too. For the moment, I'll leave you to carry on listening to the rest of the podcast, but if there's anything I can do in terms of answering any questions or finding out how you can help and support EMEA Recruitment and Operation Smile, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you once again and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
No, it's interesting because I think obviously within that you talked about technology, working with people, loving to build relationships and talking with people. And I think sometimes a bit of the challenges with the technology and the systems, they can sometimes move people away, I guess, a little bit from the personal communication. I mean, obviously these days, I posted actually on LinkedIn today about how the go-to way to communicate very often is via email or WhatsApp or so on, and it makes building relationships quite challenging. But obviously with technology and areas like BI and data becoming a huge part of our lives in the future, I thought I'd ask you really around technology, BI and data, and how you feel that's going to impact on the HR function of the future, because I suppose there is a worry it might take away the personal relationship building, but clearly there's some advantages behind it as well. So I thought I'd just ask you around your thoughts on BI and data and the impact of HR really.
Yeah, so Paul, I think this is the most incisive question that you're asking. It's also a question on which HR professionals have to develop a clear point of view. Now, technology is important. Technology is cardinal to everything you are doing. If you don't come on top of technology, technology will ensure that it makes you miss the best, or it makes you, let's say, partially redundant. I would not say fully redundant. On the other hand, there is no replacement. There is no substitute for relationship in life. You know it, and I know it. You and I know it, not because some organizational behavior professor taught it, but because you know that you derive your life energy from depending upon the relationship you have with your parents, with your mother, father, grandmother, wife, spouse. And if they're not there, if there is something missing. And if organizations don't tap into the relationship dimension, and especially one-on-one relationships, organizations are going to lose a lot. They may become unsustainable. They may become, they may actually become, zones of, cross profit maximization with very, very, with very, very contractual relationships. And by that logic, they will not survive. So let me answer it in two parts. First is, I feel that in 5 to 7 years from now, there will be data scientists working in human resources. They would give you who is a great learner, who is not such a great learner. They will, raise alarm bells on who is a great performer or a great talent who is about to leave. So there will be predictive analytics. They will give you insights about, people, the way they are interacting and their interaction patterns. So digital is going to stay, and digital is going to come to every department of the company, including HR. And HR people are going to find it a little uncomfortable that they will have, people high on computation and high on analytics sitting with them. But that's going to be the reality. And I don't think there is any choice about it. On the other hand, just because you have got tons and tons of technology and predictive analytics, it does not mean that the value of relationship goes away. People really want to work for somebody who they think as a role model, as a person who walks the talk, as a person who is not only taking the company to the next level, but as a person who's truthful in his personal life, in his commitments, in his values. So I believe that HR professionals, not only HR professionals, more than that, the leaders of the company will have to ensure that they interact face to face, they meet people, they create great connections. And it is the quality of the interactions between these people on informal topics, not on work-related topics, which is actually going to create a huge organization, because those interactions form your everyday culture, and those everyday culture are the sources of energy or otherwise. So I believe both these things are going to become more important. I believe HR professionals, to be smart and effective, will have to understand the dichotomy between the two. And I believe that anybody who thinks that somebody can be working out of Amazon all the time and not meeting, even once, is definitely not going to create an organization which is tapping into the human energy. And human energy essentially is about your emotional bank, with the organization.
No, and I think what you mentioned there. I think it's really interesting because if I obviously before meeting you on the podcast today, I was doing some research, and I know a lot of the people who've worked with you in the past. They highlight your areas of trust and commitments and values as some of the key things they have enjoyed working either with you or reporting into you, and it's almost a big compliment to you, really, that actually, yeah, you're talking about this now, but actually you have done what you say you're going to do, just as you mentioned earlier on in the podcast as well. And I think obviously what you mentioned there, the changing reality of HR, that in, let's say, 6-7 years, data science will become a big part of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's another change, another challenge, that HR and yourself are going through. And I know over the years you've been involved in a number of organizational change projects. So I suppose, do you feel you can take some of the experience from these projects you worked on in the past to the next journey of HR? And I suppose what are the biggest challenges you could see?
Yeah, I mean, change is the law of nature, as they say. And if you really want to step up performance, if you really want to step up the organizational resilience or organizational strength, if you really want to go to the next level, you will have to go into what Tom Peter used to say, project management. You have to have massive projects which take the organization to the next cultural level, next operational efficiency level, next process resilience level. So I think change is a part of great organization. It's also the only tool to ensure that whatever disrupts you, you are ready to turn it around, you're ready to respond to it and really come back and operate at a high level of efficiency. I think the key element in change management is, I always say, is about the why, how, and what. Essentially, sometimes employees they have a high sense of fatigue that, oh my God, there are so many projects. Every project is called a change management project or a transformation project. And they say, oh, another bullshit. I'm not going to take it anymore. But when you explain to the people why you need to do this, why it is critical for them, what is in it for them, that's when you start getting their buy-in. So I think the first thing in a change management project is understanding the why, communicating the why, and communicate. When you over-communicate, then people start settling in their head, and then you explain how to do about it. And then you try to say, how to go about it and what it is all about. So to me, the key issue is telling the story behind the change and occupying the mind share of all the change participants. So they say they see it as integral to their success, and that, I think, and that does all the trick. Obviously, you need a good project management. You need clarity of objectives. You need to have a Gantt chart. You need to share information. But to me, the most important issue is why and what is in it for them.
No, it's true. I mean, I think you'd probably be aware of the work of Simon Sinek. He's very big on the why question. He has a few books out. One of them being Start With Why. And I mean, it's the point that he makes regularly through the book that if you really want to get people on board with almost anything, if you start with the reason why things are happening, why they're changing, then even if necessarily they may not 100% agree, at least they know why it's happening, and they can adjust to it because they know the bigger picture of things. But again, it's probably one of those things that's not, it's easier to say than to do. But I think it feels like the way you're talking about it is something that's quite ingrained in your approach now. Is it something that you've just learned over time, or you feel you've always had that approach to change?
No, we learn it. I mean, I personally learned it after struggling with a few projects, especially with stakeholder support. With this issue about one or two struggles and one or two projects, especially with the key stakeholders, I just learned two things: that in addition to the concrete tracking of having a Gantt chart, a project management charter, and doing weekly reviews, there are two critical behavioral software dimensions. If you don't do that well, you're set up for failure. The first is the why, explaining the why. The second is what is in it for them. And the third is communicate, and communicate. The more you communicate, even if sometimes people don't agree, they feel included. They feel acknowledged. They get a positive emotion in their body to understand what you're trying to say, and that makes a success. So this has come out of executing such projects and failing a few of them.
Mm-hmm. No, that's it. I think I think everybody has to go through a bit of failure or learning to get to the place they really want to be. I think is what you take from each unsuccessful project to become better on the next one, really. And I think it is good so that you've been able to evaluate that and then bring it into your current way of working. And it sounds very very appealing and the right way to do things to approach a project in this way. I mean, obviously, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you today about was people. I mean, clearly everything we've been talking about so far, it's around people and teams and their approach. But it's I guess it ultimately starts with having great people around you. And I thought I'd ask you, really, from your experience, what you have felt are some of the key steps to take in order to have a really efficient and effective recruitment process, because it's not, again, it's one of these things that's not easy to do, but if you can get it right, then it really helps massively with all of these challenges we've been talking about so far, and then obviously the retention, which you mentioned as well.
Yeah, so for me, recruitment, especially recruitment of senior talent, is one of the most high leveraged activities that HR does. I'm using the word leverage in the sense that the people of finance use, like debt as a leverage, or anything which is of high significance. I believe that adding a new talent to the top team can really bring top dollars, can really strengthen the organization, especially with the way he or she's going to work on the strategy, the execution, the culture, these pieces. So for me, in addition to the regular stuff that we are doing currently in terms of doing resume parsing, doing resume matching, there are 2 or 3 very critical things. The first is the cultural fitment of the candidate. It is possible that the candidate was the best candidate in X context, but is that the best candidate for you in the Y context is what is really required to be understood. So I think the first thing is try to see the cultural fitment of the candidate. That's the first thing which is very, very important for me. The second is around the background check. I believe that when you do a background check, and this is a very qualitative process, you get the nuances of his leadership style. You get to know the small things that the leader does. So I would say background check, cultural fitment, and third, his own personal values and his own personal objectives, his drivers are very, very critical, especially at leadership level. These are the 3 things that we really try to understand. It's not a very data-driven, ERP-driven process. It's a very informal process, yet it is a process, and you do it by having a lot of informal discussions with the people that your potential hire has worked with or they have known. And it is also to do with a few of the psychometric questionnaires that you administer upon them. So to me, that's what I always do, because the cost of a wrong hire is always very high. And the cost of a wrong hire at a senior level, sometimes leads to a very high negative impact. So it's better to be careful, diligent, and perform all kinds of checks, all kinds of cultural fitment checks before going ahead with the recruitment.
No, I mean, you mentioned there the value of doing it to make sure you're having a process set up in the right way to hire great people, to the cultural fit, and obviously the checking the personal values and objectives within that, because hiring the the wrong person can the value of hiring the right person is shown very clearly as to when you have examples of hiring the wrong person. And I think I was going to ask you a bit more on that, actually, Sanjay. I mean, what do you think is the true cost of the wrong hire?
I mean, that's an answer which is very difficult to quantify, but what I have seen is you lose time. More importantly, if you are the leader who has made a wrong hire, it does dent your reputation, in the sense that if the individual selected was functionally good, he was good from a profile perspective, but if he's asked to leave because of cultural fitment and values, they see you as unfair. So it's a dent to the culture. It's a dent on the hiring practices. But most importantly, it also leaves the immediate team distracted.
So yeah, you've talked about the costs of the wrong hire, and I think it just emphasizes even more again around taking more time to hire the right person. You know, I think we see a lot of examples over the 20 years I've been in recruitment where we've worked with companies where speed and volume has maybe been emphasized more than quality, and actually, whilst the company has managed to hire someone quickly, if it's not really worked out after 6 months, then the costs of hiring that person covers all the things that you've mentioned there, and it's a very timely process to correct as well, really, in addition to that. But I think it's one of the things that's come out of COVID is that companies are more cautious now when they're hiring. They do take a bit longer to make the right decision, and I think actually that can have a positive impact actually on hiring the right person and on the retention side of things.
Right.
So, I mean, so it's good to get your thoughts on all these things, Sanjay. I mean, I know obviously we've talked a bit about your leadership style and the things that you value as a person, and I think earlier on you mentioned you know, to be working with a manager or managers in a career who really, you know, inspire you and bring out the best in you. So I didn't know if there's anybody through your career that you would really pinpoint, whether it's inside work or whether it's outside of work, that has really been somewhat of a big inspiration for you personally.
Oh, I think I was very lucky, and I had multiple people who positively impacted me. I would not want to give a long list of examples. I would say that I did a mid-career MBA when I was in mid-30s, and I happened to meet this professor who was a part of Michael Porter's Monitor Group. He was the head of Asia Pacific. He became a teacher, and he was so passionate about his subject strategy. He will go into the details and understand the last point. He will ensure that everybody in the class understood it. He was a taskmaster. He will really quiz people, probe people. He will never make anybody sit in the class comfortably. He ensured that everybody's on his toes. What I really learned from him is that when you do a job, you do pretty well. You take it very seriously, and you don't have responsibility, or you deliver on responsibility to yourself in your profession when you are really demanding, on everybody who's involved in that particular game, and a subject matter expert. Let me give another example from a professional life. And this man was a great example of leading by example. So if you have an accident, if you have any mishap, you know, instead of coming on the phone call and organizing a meeting on reviews as to who's doing what, how is it going on, despite being the topmost boss, he will be the first one to sit in a train, sit in a car, and be at the site himself and ensure that he takes command. In that process, if something used to go wrong, he was not the one to ask questions. He was the one who was getting questioned. So he always exposed himself in the most difficult circumstances. And in that process, he earned so much of respect in the organization, despite failing a number of times. That, you know, people used to feel, oh man, just look at this person. He's just like saying, although I'm the head of the unit, although I'm the head of the unit, but when it is a crisis, I am like the man on the spot, and anyone can question me. So he just exposed himself, and obviously there were a lot of mishaps that happen when you have an accident, you have a fire, but amazing person, just truly inspirational. Never shied away from putting himself in the line of fire.
I mean, it's a really amazing character trait to have. Again, it's similar to what some of the other things we've talked about today, where it's easy to say you can be this, but actually when you are in the situation and you have to put yourself forward into the firing line, a lot of people will shy away from it. And that's why you get so much respect for being somebody who can do it and is happy to take on that responsibility. It's good for I think the morale of the team, but also for the knowledge that they're all in it together and you work as a team, and it allows people to probably be a lot happier in their job and to have the flexibility and freedom to achieve what they want to achieve.
Right. No, I agree. Such people are very rare. And they don't derive their power from the position. They derive their power from what they do. They derive their power from from leading from the front, and they drive their power by giving success, or by attributing success to their team members, but by taking upon themselves all the tougher issues, all the failures. They are very few, but they really stay in your mind for a long time, and they really build incredibly strong organizations.
Mm-hmm. No, very true. Well, it's been great to have you on the podcast today, Sanjay. Really appreciate it, and I know our network will also take a lot from what we've spoken about. I just wondered if there's a way for our network to reach out to you, what the best way it is for them to contact you. So how would you advise the best way for the network to contact you, Sanjay?
I mean, you can reach out to me anyway. I'm a very accessible person and I have all the time in the world. You can reach out to me through an email or through a network forum. Anyway, any way that is comfortable and convenient to you.
Perfect. So what we'll do when we promote the podcast on LinkedIn, we'll make sure we put a link to your profile on there as well to help people connect with you in addition. So then that will help the network and yourself to make it easy. So once again, thank you so much for your time, Sanjay. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and all the best for the rest of the year.
Thank you, Paul. I really enjoyed talking to you, and it's always good to interact with people like you, because you interact with a lot of people and you bring in a lot of insights, and we take some of those insights back to our organization and help us, which really helps us do some more one or two new things, which adds richness to the organizational cultural and organizational health. Thank you, and have a good week ahead.
Perfect. Thanks. No problem at all, Sanjay. Great to speak to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you'd like to reach out to Paul or myself, please feel free to send a connection through on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes of the podcast, you can find them all at our website, www.emearecruitment.eu.